Hello, everyone.
Professor Guth, how are you?
Yes, hello. Back in Robson Hall. It's
Yes,
the
sir.
Lord.
Yes, sir.
Lloyd.
John Irvine, your hair is shorter than 1972.
He's physically shorter too.
No, I'm not. Horrible size.
Who said 1972?
That was Harold Arkin.
Jack, it's Glenn Orris here. How are you?
I was just saying hello to you. How are things in BC?
Well, it's sunny and warm here.
Yeah, sure it is. That's what they all say.
Yeah, until it's raining.
Good to see you, Glenn.
Jack, it's great to see you.
You too. What year did you graduate, Glenn?
72.
Yeah.
So 69, we were the first year. We started at the courthouse downtown, and then we moved at Christmas to Robson Hall.
Right. So who were you in Nippon's class?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he was one of the profs. Yeah, I guess I was in his class. I mean, he was one of our profs. Or Nippon. No, I was in his class. You're right. Yeah. Sorry.
Glenn and I were in the same class.
That's right.
Right. Hi, Harold.
Yeah. Hi, Jack. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Good.
Where are we finding you? Are you in Toronto?
Yes, I am.
So Jack, I came out to Vancouver after graduating from law school in your tax courses and tried to get into a practice involving tax. But I made a left turn and went into litigation, and now I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I don't know how to even explain that to you, but you know.
Well, as you'll hear, as you may hear in the course of when it's my turn later in this program, I wanted to be a criminal defense lawyer, and I wound up in the tax department.
Well, there you go.
And I have to tell you, Glenn, I thought I got a lucky break.
Well, I'm enjoying what I'm doing. That's what counts. Good to see you well.
You too. Now, were you hooked up with Jim Halley while you were out there? I can't remember what the relationships were.
No, Jim, we both played football through Kelvin, and he went on to play with me in Winnipeg. But we didn't practice together.
Uh-huh.
David, you're doing well, I hope.
Just ducky.
Good.
Just ducky here. Yes. Hello, Graham Durant Taylor. I'm watching the chat room. It's crazy.
Robert Tapper to everyone. Okay.
Robert
Sorry.
Tapper.
Me is Tapper.
Robert Tapper.
Class of 65. That's who I am.
Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are. Hello. And welcome to the Law School Virtual Homecoming. I'm David Asper, the acting dean, and let me begin by acknowledging that the U of M campuses are located on the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and of course, the home of the Métis Nation. I'll be back in a little while to formally host the event, but as we touted in our advertising to you, and by the way, there's over 200, maybe 250 people, which is unprecedented for a Robson Hall reunion. And as I said in my note to you, I think it's all because you won't risk getting a parking ticket. So to kick things off, we thought, how would we do this? And we thought it would be best, because most of you have probably experienced him somewhere along your life in law school and in your journey in life, to celebrate 50 years of teaching at Robson Hall. We thought this was the best way to kick it off and to do it with the legend. So ladies and gentlemen, live from Robson Hall, classes in session, and here is the one, the only, Professor John Irvine.
Woohoo!
Thank you, David. Can people hear me?
Yes.
Good.
Well, yes.
Yep.
Well, I am, in fact, John Irvine, not alas unchanged, but certainly unimproved by the years. And it's been suggested to me that I should give you a little tiny lecture today. Something they said to do with Donohue and Stevenson, which encompasses, I suppose, about 7/8 of the law of torts. So I'm going to have to boil things down a little. Donohue and Stevenson has been around now for 88 years. It's become richly patinated with subsequent case law. And to make this manageable for this kind of exercise, I've obviously got to bite off a little tiny bit of the subject and just deal with that today. To do that, can I remind you from the very start that Donohue has stood as authority for two completely different propositions of law. One of these is Lord Atkin's famous neighbour principle. Important though it's been over the last 80, 90 years, let me just tell you that that principle, the substance of which is being continually revised, elaborated, embroidered, and generally fiddled around with, mainly by the Supreme Court, was never part of the ratio of Donohue and Stevenson. It was, in fact, just a very elegant obiter dictum by Lord Atkin, and Lord Atkin alone. None of the other four judges wanted to deal with it, but because of its eloquence, it stuck, and the rest of the story most of us know about. It wasn't indeed part of the ratio, nor was it in fact the Atkin neighbour principle wasn't in fact invented by Lord Atkin. It was the brainchild of Sir William Brett, who confusingly changed his name in mid-career to Lord Esher, Master of the Rolls, and he arrived at it in two installments, Heaven and Pender in 1883, and then Lelièvre and Gould in 1893. And I am not going to touch it with a 10-foot pole, not today anyway. It would take up all the available time and wouldn't get a very good treatment. It needs a week or two to deal properly with the neighbour principle. So that's all I'm going to say about that. It's the other proposition of law in Donohue, the one that was the ratio decidendi. That's what I want to talk about briefly. But this proposition of law enjoyed the support of all three of the majority judges. Yes, Lord Atkin subscribed to it and would have acknowledged, I think, that that was really his ratio. Lord Macmillan and Lord Thankerton. All three would have agreed to this, and I'm just going to read you, at the risk of being rather tedious, what Lord Macmillan actually said. He said, I've no hesitation in affirming that a person who for gain engages in the business of manufacturing articles of food and drink intended for consumption by members of the public in the form in which he issues them is under a duty to take care in the manufacture of those articles. That duty, in my opinion, he owes to those whom he intends to consume his products. He manufactures his commodities for human consumption. He intends and contemplates that they shall be consumed. By reason of that very fact, he places himself in a relationship with all the potential consumers of his commodities, and that relationship which he assumes and desires for his own ends imposes on him a duty to take care to avoid injuring them. He owes them a duty not to convert by his own carelessness an article which he issues to them as wholesome and innocent into an article which is dangerous to life and health. There's nothing very startling about that proposition, is there, to 21st century ears? Seems rather self-evident, not particularly bold or earth-shattering. But in 1932, incredibly, people were shocked by it. The dissenting judges in Donohue and Stevenson wanted nothing to do with it. The two Englishmen on the court, both of whom dissented, who were they now? I've lost them here. Oh, who cares? They were the losers anyway, and they could not bring themselves to agree, even with that modest proposition put forward by the 3 majority judges. The idea that a consumer who's been injured by an edible or drinkable product can sue the manufacturer as distinct from the retailer who directly sold the goods to the customer. It wasn't very astonishing as a proposition, nor was it particularly novel. The American courts had got there 15 or 20 years before. They too had begun the development of negligence law by referring to the situation of the consumer of items of food and drink. And having started at that point, they continued, just as the Commonwealth courts were to do, they continued to develop their law of negligence gradually into other areas of human activity. But the Americans had got a head start of, well, 14, 15 years before Donohue and Stevenson even came along. And Lord Atkin, at least Lord Atkin, was very well aware of this, and it emboldened him to do what he did. Let me just give you a case from the American history of negligence. It so closely anticipates our own. The English and Commonwealth courts were simply tracking American developments in these early stages. I want to tell you about the case of Pillars, P-I-L-L-A-R-S, against R.J. Reynolds Tobacco in 1918 in the Supreme Court of Mississippi. Mr. Pillars was an ordinary sort of Joe. One of his little pleasures in life was chewing tobacco. And he went down to his local store and bought himself a couple of great big wads of chewing tobacco and got stuck into them on his way home. And the first one was apparently pretty good, if you like that kind of thing. And he chewed it all up and no doubt spat it out at the end, and then started on the second chunk of chewing tobacco. It was, let me tell you, brown mule chewing tobacco, top of the market, good stuff, as these things go. But this wasn't apparently a very good piece. He tried chewing it and then realized he was biting down on something untypically hard. And it felt odd. It was kind of dry and crumbly. And he noticed he was beginning to foam at the mouth as well. He thought, what the devil have I got here? And reached into his mouth and pulled it out and noticed something odd in it. And examining it, he saw, my goodness, I don't suppose those were his words, but goodness, it looks very like a human toe. And that's exactly what it was. It was a human toe, neatly severed at the joint, and with most of the flesh still adhering. It was, we're told, in an advanced state of decomposition. Well, with that, he began to feel very ill indeed. And his illness progressed and he was taken to hospital, where they diagnosed his condition as one of, I love this, ptomaine poisoning. Ptomaine with a P, of course. Ptomaine poisoning was what you've got. You're probably going to die, they told him. He didn't die. He turned around and sued Interbake Foods, and he won, which made this one of the earlier cases of negligence to be recognized by the American courts outside the strict realm of food and drink. It wasn't much of an advance beyond food and drink, but it was regarded as a bit of an advance at the time. The court had to endure the argument that the new negligence principle only applied to food and drink in the strict sense. But the Mississippi Supreme Court were having none of that. We have read, they said with care, the very able and instructive brief for the appellee, in which he argues, and we think proves, that tobacco is not food for human beings, at least, no matter how much tobacco worms or the town goat may relish it. But we're of opinion that we're not restricted to this narrow question, nor have we reached the limit when we admit that tobacco is not a beverage or a condiment or a drug. In the end, they found for the plaintiff. We believe, they said, that The way the tobacco is to be used furnishes the reason for great care in its preparation. We can imagine no reason why, with ordinary care, human toes could not be left out of chewing tobacco. And if toes are found in chewing tobacco, it seems to us that someone has been very careless. Now, that's a slight advance beyond the food and drink rule, and American law took off from there. And so in the early days of negligence in the Commonwealth countries, did the court develop slowly from that rather narrow base. A good Canadian case to that effect is Farmer against Interbake Foods in 1981. This is actually the leading Commonwealth case on chocolate biscuits. It involved a product called Square Boys, which it was once explained to me are very like wagon wheels, only square. It's a nutty marshmallow biscuit, chocolate covered. And Mr. Farmer, the plaintiff, a taxi driver, a rather obese and gluttonous taxi driver, loved these things. He used to pick them up on the way home. He'd buy a box at his local corner store, and getting home, he would make sure the television was turned on and all the other lights were turned off, and he would just stuff his face with them till they were all gone. This time, he noticed something wrong with this batch. They again felt odd in his mouth. And when he turned on the light, he was interested to notice that what he had was a pulpy mass of fibrous tissue and little shreds of chocolate, absolutely seething with maggots of the Indian meal moth. He became quite obsessive about this. He got a touch of gastroenteritis as well, but it's really a psychological sequelae that really caused him the problems. I just want to mention one final feature of this case, a truly ingenious defense, and that was the defense of contributory negligence. The court said, the defendant said he shouldn't have been eating them like that. He shouldn't have done it in eating them, stuffing his face in the dark like that. Absolutely absurd. The court wasn't having any. It said probably because there are people like the plaintiff who, despite being overweight, consume these biscuits, gulping them down in one bite without looking at them, almost in a gluttonous fashion, that the Westerns have become pillars of the Canadian financial establishment. If I had another 2 minutes, which I don't, I would deal with the terrible case of Varga and Labatt.
Well, John,
1956. I know I'm going to stop now. This
well, no,
poor chap- I
have to tell you, John, that just looking at the comments in the chat room,
I've grossed them out.
Well, we clearly made the right call by having you lead off here today, because everybody loves hearing your voice and hearing the stories. But what you may not know is that we have a little surprise for you, and this was a bit of a setup. It was a great way to invite people back to Robson Hall and have fond memories, but we have a little surprise for you, and I'm going to call on the president of the Manitoba Law Students Association, Nick Noonan, to say a few words.
Well, that's extremely nice. Thank you. I'm sorry to
Nick,
go on.
are you
so
there?
long.
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay.
All right. Good evening, everyone. As you heard, my name is Nick Noonan, and I'm the president of the Manitoba Law Students Association. Tonight, it is my distinct pleasure to be speaking to you about a true icon in our faculty's history, the legendary Professor John Irvine. Speaking on behalf of 50 years of law students who have come through our faculty, there has been no more impactful and beloved professor than our own Professor Irvine. For 50 years, our students have learned from and been entertained by Professor Irvine's captivating stories of poor Jezebel and how her marital challenges help us learn the complex subject matter of trust law. For 50 years, our students have benefited from Professor Irvine being perhaps the greatest conversation starter in the history of networking events. So, did you have Professor Irvine too? For 50 years, our students have enjoyed hearing a jovial Professor Irvine explain how a young chimney sweep named Armory would shape property law forever. For 50 years, our students have enjoyed catching the occasional glimpse of whatever crop Professor Irvine is harvesting this season hanging around in his hair by the time he gets to class. For 50 years, our community has been privileged to see the joy Professor Irvine takes in the simple pleasures in life. A good discussion of jurisprudence, a box of shortbread biscuits, or a glass of red wine. For 50 years now, Professor Irvine has been gracing the halls of our law school. After 50 years, it's only fitting for him to start gracing another, even more prestigious hall as well. On behalf of 50 years of law students who have benefited from Professor Irvine's wit, wisdom, kindness, and humor, I am honored to proclaim that the halls which contain the names of Lord Denning, Lord Diplock, and Lord Sankey have a new entrant and a new peer. I'm truly honored to introduce you all to the new Lord John Irvine of Hogan Manor. On behalf of 50 years of students, faculty, staff, colleagues, and friends, please join me in thanking Lord Irvine for all that he has done and will continue to do for the Faculty of Law. Lord Irvine, you are truly beyond compare, and we are lucky to have you.
God bless you, Nick. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. What is all this? Oh, excellent.
Now we're going to show you an image of what we just presented to him. And I'm going to raise a toast for old jurisprudence in the faculty lounge purposes to John Irvin, Lord Irvin of Haugen Manor. There it is.
Thank you so much.
Cheers to Lord Irvin.
Lord Irvin.
Here, here.
Lord Irvin.
Bless you all.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Speech.
And we've also got a new nameplate for your office, so that's going to be good too. Now I've had an equipment failure. Give me 1 second.
Go blue.
All right, I'm back. Well, okay. Thank you, John. Thanks very much. And thank you, Nick. Again, welcome everybody to the virtual homecoming. We did want to try to do something this year. And as I said, normally these aren't hugely attended events. People are far flung and busy, but it's amazing that 200 roughly people are on this call, and it's fantastic to see you all. And it's great to have you here to celebrate John's 50th anniversary at Robson Hall. And in a few moments, we'll reconnect with the former Dean, Jack London, on the launch of his book. There are many, many luminaries and distinguished alumni on the Zoom call here. Too many for me to acknowledge. The one that probably has caused the most consternation in the legal community is Dean Scaletta when he retired as the gossip columnist for Headnotes and Footnotes, because nobody knows what's going on anymore. But I thought that I would just take a couple of minutes to get you up to speed a little bit on what's happening at the law school. Many of you may wonder why I'm even here, and of course I can't talk about that. Let me say this though, in March, when the rest of the world shut down, that obviously impacted the university campus broadly and the law school. And people were, I go back and I look at the messages, the internal messages from the Law Students Association, and they were planning various social events, and life was going along swimmingly. And then everybody got jolted into the COVID-19 lockdown, and everybody went very quickly from their normal daily routine, the students, the staff, and the faculty alike, into a world for which we are and were not prepared at all. And in a moment, everybody had to adapt, and that mission carries on to this day. Faculty had to figure out how to teach online, the students had to learn online, and the staff had to provide the kind of support that we would otherwise need on a day-to-day basis. And it's really impossible to describe how disruptive this was on many levels and continues. And I just want to begin by saluting, I'm a newcomer. I started sort of officially at the beginning of July, but a couple of weeks before that. And I've seen it firsthand through the fall term, and I can't imagine what it must have been like when this online learning thing happened suddenly. So I do want to salute the resilience of our students, staff, and faculty. And we do have some of our faculty, I believe, on this call. Professor Bruce Curran. Bruce, are you there? Speak up if you're there. We have
I'm here.
There's Bruce Curran. Bruce, do you want to introduce yourself? What do you teach? Who are you?
Sure. So I'm, as Dean Asper said, I'm Professor Bruce Curran, and I teach contracts and legal negotiations and trusts and labor and employment law.
Bruce was the, thanks Bruce, he was the Associate Dean for the academic program and actually was responsible in many, many ways for the administrative oversight of the conversion to the online teaching. So, you know, that was quite a crazy time. Professor Ireland, are you there? David Ireland?
Well, this is a pleasure for everyone to get to see me. Holy moly. I'm in the middle of a bonfire. It's the 5th of November. I'm burning effigies.
This is
the outfit. I teach criminal law and evidence and advocacy.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And that's
wonderful to hear John's lecture. It's just a privilege, a privilege.
And that, everyone, is what teaching law school looks like these days. I'm guessing the next one might be a little bit more presentable. Jennifer Schultz, Professor Schultz, are you there?
I am. Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure.
Oh, and Gozer.
Yeah, I've got Elliot Gozer here with me, and it's a pleasure to be here, especially a shout out to Ken the Vigeant and various other people who were grads in the 90s, and to a lot of the students who I've taught who are on this call. I've taught torts at the law school for 16 years, so I've got a long way to go to catch up to Lord Irvine, but I'm going to do my best.
Thank you very much. And one of our more recent faculty, I think about 5 years ago, Professor Virginia Torrey, are you there? Everybody, no, she's not there. All right, now our two current associate deans, Dr. Mary Sharif, are you there? I think they're all hiding. Once they've figured out that they might be on camera, everybody's run away. And Don Short, are you there? All right. We've also got support staff, Lily Deerdorf, Christine Mazer, Marcia Court, Marie Javan, who have done an amazing job supporting us. And we've got our eminent profs, Deloitte Guth. Hello, Deloitte. Do you want to say something and show everybody your face? You got to put yourself on, you got to unmute yourself and get yourself away from stuffing ballot boxes in Michigan. You got to unmute yourself. Okay, and Professor Dale Gibson, are you there, Dale? This is the most common phrase in the English language right now is unmute yourself.
How about that?
There you go. Hello, Deloitte.
Hey, everybody. It looks as though we've won. We have to wait a few more days before the detritus drops.
All right, and a former Associate Dean, Lisa Feinstein, are you there? Lisa's, I've brought back Lisa as a program advisor to help with our business law. We're working on some programming with both with the law school and potentially with the business school, and Lisa's working with me on that. Okay, all right. Carrying on then, let me give you a little update on what's happening at the school. So we've had some incredibly generous support from our alumni and from donors. And you can see that the moot courtroom has been redone thanks to a very generous gift from Ron Stern. And it's named now the Harry Walsh Moot Courtroom. And I think we've got a couple of images that show you a long needed refurbishment. And for those of you more recent students, we had a space planning meeting the other day and reminded them that the wall still doesn't work, dividing the two rooms, and the AV is terrible. So I'll just be another in a long list of deans who've tried to solve that problem. So MOOC courtroom looks a little modern, it's brighter, and that works out nicely. We've also had a couple of very generous gifts to redo our classrooms 204 and 205. Rod Senft, Rod, I'm not sure if you're on the line. I saw you in the list, but Rod has helped us out. This is the before, because what it looks like now, you can barely even go into the law school building right now because they're jackhammering that floor and that podium. And they stop for certain profs who go in to teach from their offices. And then as soon as the class is over, on go the jackhammers. So Rod Senft, very generous gift. There you see the disassembling of one of the classrooms. And Rod and a group of Mike Phelps' friends did a tremendous thing. David Unruh, I think you may be on the line, did a tremendous thing and raised money to help us redo classroom 205 as well. And so both classrooms are under construction. And I guess if there's a silver lining to us being locked out of the building and doing our classes online, it's that we can get this work done. And there's more to come. I also want to acknowledge many of you have helped teaching, coaching our MOOC court teams, volunteering as judges and mentors. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart on behalf of all of us for that. The thing that is probably most disruptive. By the way, our students, our third year students, will be doing their articling interviews next week. We now have a fall reading week, and it starts next week. And instead of getting to recharge their batteries and get ready for the exam period, they're living through the stress of the articling interviews. And we're very grateful for the connections that we do have with the profession. As I say, we're completely online learning. We're still doing some experiential learning in clinics and with judicial clerkships and such in person, but mostly it's online. And this has created quite a sense of isolation between us and the students. We had to do our orientation this year. If you can imagine being a first-year law student and you remember back to your own first day of law school, the cacophony of noise and meetings that you had with new classmates, with your faculty, well, we had to break each section up into half and do one half in the morning, one half in the afternoon, sitting in that MOOC courtroom, everybody masked up. And it felt more like you were sitting in the dentist chair than at the first day of law school. It's very challenging to do it, and it's been very challenging to try to get those students integrated and part of the program. And I give a big shout out to our students associations who are really helping us to both get them engaged, but also to find ways to connect. As I said, Lisa Feinstein's helping me work on some business law programming. And Carrie, I think I saw your name in the chat room. And I just also want to acknowledge the continuing support of Carrie Vicker with our business law clinic. And I think that there's going to be some good things to come. See, that's what happens. You get dogs barking. The other day I was trying to teach my class and my neighbor decided that was the day that the leaf blowers had to show up. And that's the way the world works now. So we're rolling, and it's a real testament to the people, and more than that, and even including the fact that I'm here and the previous dean isn't, is a real testament to the enduring nature of the institution itself. It survives whoever comes and goes. and we're doing well. We've got great students. I'm teaching, and I'm getting to know some of the third years, and all is well if remote. So with that, I do want to sort of close with that little update by saying that I'm very accessible, and if you want to connect or have questions or want to talk about what's going on, I'm very easily reachable, and I encourage you to do that because I love making the connections. So with that, I'm just going to have a quick check of the chat to see if anybody has a question. Okay, if you have questions, I can't monitor the chat because there's 200 of you, and I'm about to introduce our next guest. So if you have questions, put them in the chat room. I'm now going to go to my other room here, which through the magic of television is going to get me the Fireside Chat. See that? See, you become very good at this kind of stuff when you're teaching, and every meeting that you have is on Zoom. So let me introduce. We do have a special guest here, he's published a book, and hopefully he'll talk to us a little bit about the history of the law school and what the book's about. Jack London got his LL.B. in 1966, and then an LL.M. From Harvard in 71. He practiced with the Department of Justice and then in private practice, and joined the faculty in 1971. And he was the dean from 79 to 84. He was appointed QC in 83 while he was still the dean. And he went back to private practice, and in 90, as a result of his representation of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, and maybe we'll get him to talk a little bit about that journey, and through the Meech Lake Accord, he was honored with his own eagle feather. And in 2004, he was inducted into the Order of Canada. He's received teaching award for excellence, 2 of them. And he's written extensively in popular media and in scholarly journals. He produced and starred in a television show called The Right Thing to Do. And Jack is a pretty big deal. It's great if you can see the images of what Jack used to be. It's great to welcome Jack back to Robson Hall. Jack, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Now we're showing the images of the hippie Jack. I'm gonna, it's, you know, the name of the book is called Serendipity, My Path Through Life and Law. And it's actually, I'll start this way in saying that it's serendipitous that I'm the acting dean of the law school, interviewing you as a previous dean. And it actually wouldn't have been possible for me to be doing this without you. And that's serendipitous, because I wasn't going to be allowed to come back to Manitoba without your assistance. So I'm very grateful for that.
I've thought about it a couple of times. I'm not sure I made the right decision.
So I guess the easy question, I guess, to start off is you've written the book, and it's become, I think, quite popular. And I attended the book launch. And so why don't you start with, I guess the easy question is, what's the book about? I tried to read the first page and the last page to figure that out, but I actually wound up reading the whole thing. Why did you write the book?
I wrote the book because I was, when I was younger, I didn't take the time to ask my parents questions about who and what they were and what my grandparents had been and the lineage. And I didn't want my kids and grandchildren and their children to grow up having the same deficiency. And so I decided to write the book for them. I had no intention whatsoever of publishing the book. It was never for that purpose. It was strictly to be an intra-family deal. I started writing it 23 years ago. The copy that you're holding in your hands, if you've got one with you now, is the 27th draft of the book. And I almost got it right. I'll probably have to do another draft as we go along. Anyway, when I became concerned about the thing that causes lawyers not to write their memoirs very frequently, which is, what about confidentiality and privilege? How was I going to write the stories, particularly from my practicing years, and avoid being censured by the Law Society and more so offending clients? And so I gave the book to 3 or 4 people to read, jurists in particular, and I asked them to opine on whether or not I was within the boundaries of ethical behavior. And they came back and they said yes, but they added that they thought that the issues involved and the explanations, and particularly the work on policy, deserved to be published, wanted to be published. And so I set out to find a publisher. I was rejected by 2 or 3, and finally Heartland Press accepted me. And here we are with a book that's now on its 4th reorder at the bookstores.
It's a terrific book. I highly recommend it. And I do want to come back to some of the policy issues, but one of the things that you talk about, and you know, in pretty pretty clear and graphic terms, is luck, is the role of luck. Why don't you just, I think if I just set you off on that, you'll go with it. So why don't you talk about that a little bit?
So I'll give you a capsule of what's actually in the book, because in a way, almost all of the book is about my strong feeling that luck is more important than brains, that luck is the most important variable in life. And I come to that because when I think back to myself as a teenager and a young 20s, as a C student, as a C+ student, maybe if I wasn't failing courses at the university. And I look at how I have been allowed to develop over all of these years and to be able to do the things that I've been allowed to do, and hopefully to do them well. And I look around me and I think back to other people who were smarter than I was, and taller than I was, and better looking than I was, and better athletes than I was, and better, more. And many of them didn't get to that point. And when I tried to figure out what possibly the difference could be, the only reasonable answer to that was luck. And so I've believed that luck has been the determining factor in my life for many, many, many years. And I think overall it is the most determining factor, because you can be the best there is, you can be the smartest there is, but if you don't get the break, nobody ever knows about it. You never get to show it. And I was lucky in many, many ways. I've lived a very, very lucky life. I'm a lucky guy. My wife is sitting here tonight, and I'm sure she thinks that I'm a lucky guy, and she's never wrong. So I would think that's right.
I was at the book launch, and I've got my little piece of paper that I was taking notes when you were talking. You actually said, "I'm not dead. That's lucky," which sort of rocked me. You know, and then you talk about sort of good luck and bad luck, and the question is what you do about it. You want to sort of elaborate on that a little bit?
So before I get to the death part, let me say that I won the genetic lottery. I was born to immigrant parents who came to this country in the late 30s, started a small business, and they were fairly uneducated in formal terms, but they were fabulous people. They were smart, they were bookworms, they were charismatic, and they trusted me and they let me go, and they didn't really raise me, they set me free. And as a result of that lucky break of genetics, I have been able to build a life that I don't think I could have if it weren't for that, and I think would be difficult for anyone to have built without that. In terms of other forms of luck, I've escaped death 3 times. I didn't think about myself as a particularly lucky person before the first one, but when I was 16, noted criminal defense lawyer in Winnipeg, Jaime Weinstein, and I and a friend of ours were driving in a car down to Minneapolis. I wanted to go see the Metropolitan Opera, which was traveling to Minneapolis. I'd never been to an opera, couldn't figure out why anybody would want to go to an opera. So we went down and they came with me, and the guy who was driving the car, wasn't me and it wasn't Jaime Weinstein, was driving in the rain. It was slippery, it was wet. He lost it on the curve, crossed over the median line, and we had a head-on collision with a car coming in the opposite direction. We were probably doing 80, and the car coming the other way was probably doing 65 or 70. The car imploded on, the other guy's car imploded on him. He was killed instantly. And the three of us got thrown out of the car, and I came to sliding down the middle of the highway about 200 or 300 feet on that slippery highway. And I put my hand down and I rolled over into the ditch. I was winded. I took a second, I stood up, and I had a scratch in the middle of my hand. And the other guys were not so lucky. So after that, I thought to myself, well, you know, maybe there's something to this. Maybe there's something in the universe that that has a spirit of that kind. Later, once I started practicing law with First Nations and spending a lot of time up north at reserves and in small towns with rural bands, I would fly up quite often in a 4 or 6 seater plane. And on one of those occasions, I was landing at a place called Easterville, and the pilot said we were about 1,000 feet from the ground, going down on this ice path, which was what they called a runway. And he said there was a problem because the landing gear had just fallen off the plane. We didn't have any landing gear. And so we crashed. We crashed into the runway. We crashed into a snowbank at the other end. The plane was demolished. Some people were hurt. I walked away without any problem at all. So now I thought to myself, for sure, I've got a little lucky streak. And then the third one was that for my 50th birthday in 1993, Belva and I were in Rwanda to climb the volcanoes for the mountain gorillas. And that night they decided to start the Hutu-Tutsi war. And they started out in front of our place, and at 1 o'clock in the morning, they shot up our room with machine guns, the glass and flying all over the place. We managed to sequester ourselves in a corner of a bathroom for 36 hours. We lay in an S-curve. Long story short, we managed to get out of there with the help of the Hutu army, and got back to Winnipeg. The whole thing took 5 days. It was terrifying. The Chief Justice of Rwanda and his wife and kids, who were with us in hiding, didn't make it. They were killed. And so it was the third occasion on which I survived. And by then I was pretty certain that there was some kind of force that was surrounding me.
Yeah, you've really, in the book, you've really opened yourself up and told some very personal stories. And and I guess the luck part is part of your story. And people think they might know you, but there's a lot more in there. And I want to sort of pivot, because luck, I guess, plays a role a little bit in, you wind up acting for the Assembly of First Nations, or the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, and get yourself into probably the biggest constitutional quagmire certainly in our recent history, the Meech Lake Accord. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and how you got involved with it and where it's led?
Sure. Let me first acknowledge the fact that when I did Meech, I did it with Gord McIntosh, who was currently acting for Elijah Harper at that time. I was acting for the Chiefs. And without his genius, we wouldn't have done what we did. So
I think Gord might actually be on the call.
I saw his name on the list. That's why I said what I just said. If he hadn't been on the list, I probably wouldn't have said that. But he's on the list. Anyway, so actually, that's a luck story too, in a way. Prior to that happening, I had been asked to do a pro bono piece of work during the free trade debate for a group called Canadians Against Free Trade. They were sort of young roustabouts who were begging along the way, and they were putting posters up on telephone poles in public buildings in Winnipeg, and they were charged under a City of Winnipeg bylaw, which was an offense at the time. They were convicted. I took an appeal to the Court of Appeal for them, and won the appeal under the charter, and they went on about their business. About a year later, the First Nations people had gathered at the Fort Garry Hotel to talk about how they were going to beat Meech Lake, and they said they needed a lawyer. And that group was there because, as you know, politicos, young politicos in particular, they go anywhere that there's political action taking on. It doesn't matter what the issue is. They just like the juice. They like the sex of that thing. Well, they happened to be there, and they said, well, there's this guy London, and he just did this job for us last year, and he got us off on the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And Phil Fontaine called me after that and brought me into Meech. And so McIntosh and I together, with lots of other people, worked out Meech. It took us several days. For those of you who don't know what the Meech Lake Accord was, I think everybody does. It was going to revolutionize constitutional Canada in ways that were unlovely, but in particular, it was going to revolutionize Canada because the preamble to the Accord said that there were two founding nations in Canada, the French and the English. And the First Nations people of Canada didn't quite think that that was accurate, and they were prepared to do anything they had to do in order to beat it. And that was the task we took. The Accord had to be ratified within a certain period of time. There was only a few days left to allow it to be ratified in Manitoba. The Filmon Conservative government made a mistake in the way in which they entered the motion to approve the Accord. We picked up on that. You needed 100% yes votes from all the legislators in order to proceed with the debate. Elijah said no, and the Accord was killed, and that changed the course of history in Canada. Let me just add to that, because talk about luck and sequences. And after that, I was also involved for the Chiefs in the negotiations of the Charlottetown Accord, which was going to bring a third order of government to Canada. It was defeated ultimately, but I worked on that project as well. And then when I was working for the AFN, I negotiated for the AFN the Clarity Act on how a province can secede from Canada, how one determines whether or not the question is clear and if the answer has been clear. So I hit a trifecta within a very short space of time on those three really wonderful jobs.
Is that the most memorable case that you would have as you sort of look back over your life and career?
Well, actually, the most memorable case I had was when I was a second-year law student in 1963, articling in the office of Harvey Pollack, who was a genius and was very helpful in my development. And he wasn't there one day, and a phone call came in. It was a First Nations person who had just been sentenced to a $50 fine for it was a driving offense, or 30 days if he couldn't pay. And he said he couldn't pay, he needed time to pay, and the magistrate, whose name was Isaac Rice, refused to give it to him. I went down to the courthouse, got it put back on the docket, and I got in front of Rice, and I had this, he said, I said, Your Worship, as we called them in those days, this can't be possible. Everybody gets time to pay, and this is a traffic offense. He doesn't have a record. There's nothing, no one's been hurt. Why wouldn't he get time to pay? And he said to me, London, you whippersnapper, he said to me, that's exactly how he said it. London, you whippersnapper, he said. He was the 27th Indian to appear before me that day. And I've had enough of those people. And I said, you're a fucking racist. And he cited me for contempt. And I saw my career floating out the window. I haven't even started it yet. And if it weren't for a prosecutor whose name was Jack Montgomery, they called him the Silver Fox because of his silver tones. He was great. Asked if he could go into chambers. They went into chambers, they came out, and he lifted the suspension and told me never to appear before him again. But I will never forget the stupidity of making that statement. And I will never forget having made it and being proud of having made it.
Yeah, that takes guts. Can you imagine a world now where we would try to where we would try to define our country as two founding nations? I don't think anybody would even dare say that out loud anymore.
Not since Meech. And but if Meech had been passed, if that became the constitutional law of Canada, that would have been enshrined, because, as you know, getting an amendment to the Constitution is virtually impossible.
Jack, where do we get the book?
The book is for sale. The paperback version is for sale at McNally Robinson at the Forks and at Grant Park, and I think in Saskatoon, and maybe in the New York airport. I'm not sure. They deliver. You can call them and you can go online. There's a link that, and in the invitation that everybody got to this, there are links to get to McNally Robinson. If that's not your preference, very shortly, I'm hoping in the next couple of days, the ebook is going to be out. It's the first time this publisher's ever done an ebook. They're called Heartland Associates at mts.net. And if you write to them, just send them an email, they'll send you back the information about when the book comes out and make the arrangements. And it's about $6 or $8 cheaper. And of course, you can carry it wherever you want to go. I'm not too happy about the ebook. I'd rather people buy the print book because it turns out that we're #1 bestseller on the McNally list, and the ebooks are not going to be part of that. So I hate to give up that opportunity.
Well, congratulations. Did I miss anything that you want to say about the book?
I'm happy that I wrote it. I like the look in my children and my grandchildren's eyes. But more than that, and I'll end with this, I have this notion when I'm lying in bed at night of a great grandchild. All those years from now, finding the book in an attic, dusting it off, reading it, and smiling. That would be enough. That would be enough.
Perfect. Well, thank you for taking time.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity, David.
John, I'm coming back to you.
David, yes.
What happened with the cookie?
With the cookie?
What happened with the wagon wheel?
Oh,
with the chocolate biscuit.
He recovered in the end. It was, yeah, he was told that he'd been guilty of contributory negligence. The court wasn't going to buy that. He got his money. I'd love to know what happened with the guy in the end with the chewing tobacco. I don't know how much he sued for, but it would be nice to know what he got for such a horrible experience. I would have asked for an arm and a leg if I'd been him. Anyway, I was going to give you another case about beer, about Varga and Labatt, about a man who went and drank a whole bottle of Labatt's India Pale Ale without realizing he was drinking 7% Javex solution. He managed to throw it all up in time, but the most ingenious defense, I've never seen it before or since. Labatt's put up the defense of infallibility. They said they had a system for washing their bottles, which was so perfect that this could not have happened. I've no idea how the court would have dealt with this had it not been for the fact that evidence was adduced of another bottle of their crystal lager, which had turned out to be, was discovered by the customer to be half full of peanut shells. So evidently the infallibility defense collapsed rather precipitately. But, you know, I could have gone, you were right to stop me. I could go on with really gross stories like this.
I think, John, I think that pretty much everybody in this call knows that you could go on.
Oh, yes, on and on and on. But I intend to come back in another 20 years and finish those stories.
Well, I want to thank you very much for preparing, and I know you put time into it because you're a pro and you're now a lord.
Yes,
so
indeed.
I misspoke when I called you John because that's not appropriate anymore. And I'm sure all your faculty colleagues will address you appropriately, right, Jennifer?
Your serene decrepitude would be quite sufficient.
And I want to thank all of you again. That's kind of our program. I wish we could be having a glass of wine and schmoozing and eating and talking, but that's not possible. So it's great to see everybody's face. And we're going to, I think we've got an image. We're going to send you off with a little bit of luck. And as our students get themselves ready for midterms and Christmas exams, and hopefully you all are safe and healthy and happy, and there's a rub of the Chief Justice's head for all of you. Thank you very much, everybody, and good night.
Very good night.
Nice job, David.
Very.
Well done. Thanks all.
That was fabulous. Till we meet
Thank
again.
Well done.
Thank you.
Great job, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
That was great. Thank
Charlotte, hi, Eamon. Hi, David.
you. Very well done all. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Sean. Hi, Gail. Hi, Gail. Hi.
Good going.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Keep well.
And check that fire, Dean Asper, and I'm not sure the fire is aerating properly.
Eamon, you look fabulous.
Good night, and thank you. Good to see you, Gail.
Somebody keep the chat for John so he can see everything that's in the chat.
The host can download it later and print it for him.
All right. That looks good. Bye.
Thank you. Good night, all.
Okay.
Good night, everybody.
Bye, Professor.
Bye.
Bye. Great to see you.
Bye.
Professor Jack London, my mother has a corned beef sandwich for you from the Quality Delicatessen.
Can I pick it up now?
On rye.
I like it lean.
I think she knows.
Bye, Charlotte.
Bye.
Sarah
all.
Sue.
Stay safe.
Lisa Feinstein,
Yes, Jack.
I am still hip to you.
That was a pleasure.
I was going to do it on the chat, but I couldn't figure out how to do that. So we'll let
That's
the-
okay.
we'll
I
let
couldn't
the
even
world
figure
know.
out how. I couldn't figure out how to present myself. Period.
Lisa, you haven't changed since I last saw you.
You need glasses. Well, it's good to see everyone and take care. Be well.
Bye, y'all.
Yep. Bye.
Bye, Lisa.
We're lucky we don't live in the United States.
Hillary Pugh. Quick. There you
Nice
go.
job, John.
I see.
There you go.
Likewise, Jack. Very well done. Going to buy the book.
It's it's the 70, 71 guys that always carry the trade.